Hello, my name is Teri Wilson, and welcome to the Cookie Goddess Show. Today we're going to do a very old-fashioned recipe. I'm going to show you how to make oatmeal and raisin cookies. I know over the years there's been a lot of variation on this particular recipe, but I'm going to show you a very simple, basic way of making this wonderful, delicious cookie. My mother made it for me, her mother made it for her, and I'm going to show you how you can make it for your children. So I'm going to head over to my kitchen right now, and I'm going to tell you a couple of things that you're going to need before we get started. You're going to need a cup and a half of all-purpose flour, 2 sticks of butter, 2 eggs. You're going to need about a 1/4 cup of white granular sugar, about 1/2 cup of brown sugar, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, a cup of raisins, 2 eggs, and let's get started. Okay, we're back. Now, as I said, we're going to do delicious oatmeal and raisin cookies. And just to go over what you're going to need, just in case you didn't have an opportunity to go and get your ingredients, you're going to need a cup and a half of all-purpose flour, about 1 cup and a half of oatmeal, 1 cup of raisin, 1/2 cup of white granular sugar, actually a 1/4 cup of white granular sugar, and 1/2 cup of light brown sugar, or if you have a preference for dark brown sugar, you can use that. 2 sticks of butter, 2 eggs. You're going to need about a tablespoon of baking soda and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. So what we're going to do, first of all, make sure that you have two mixing bowls, because we're going to mix our brown or dry ingredients and then our wet ingredients separately. And so the first thing what we're going to do is we're going to add a teaspoon of baking soda with your flour, and about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. We're going to mix that into our bowl. Everything's been pre-measured. And in my last show, I talked about the use of a sifter. And I don't use sifters. I really don't think it's necessary. I like to mix everything by hand. The only time I actually use a sifter is when I'm making chocolate cookies. And I think the sifter is very necessary there, because you're dealing with powdered cocoa, and it tends to bubble up as a powder in your ingredients. And if it isn't properly sifted, it can actually burst into the wetness, and you never really mixed up anything. So we're going to mix up our dry ingredients. Make sure that baking soda and salt is thoroughly mixed together. Then we're going to take our second bowl, and we're going to start with our sugar. We've got a 1/2 cup of brown sugar. We have a 1/4 cup of white granular sugar. We're going to mix that in. And of course, now what I usually do, before I even mix in all the rest of my ingredients, I like to mix up that sugar. Get it all mixed in. Make sure everything's blended together. You know what? I left out one ingredient. I'm going to also include vanilla extract. You're going to need about a tablespoon of that. So my sugar is mixed together. We're going to add our butter, 2 sticks. Now this butter is partially melted, and it makes things a lot easier, especially if you're in a hurry. You can do that. You can have your butter partially melted, but if you're including butter straight out of the refrigerator, you can do that too. It takes a little bit more time, but you simply slice it into your ingredients, and the mixing process takes a little bit longer. So we're going to add all of that in. Okay. All right. Next, we're going to add our egg. We're going to do 2 eggs. I'm going to mix that in. Now, I'm going to take that and mix all of that sugar and egg and butter together with your vanilla extract. And I'll do that right now before I forget. Okay. Just mix all of that in. You know, as I said at the beginning of the show, my mother used to make these wonderful oatmeal and raisin cookies for my sister and I. And it's one of the happier times growing up, coming home from school, smelling those freshly baked cookies just coming through the kitchen. I loved it. Okay, you're going to mix that up. Now what we're going to do is add our raisins. You're going to have we've got 1 cup here. Oh my God. I'm going to throw that in. I don't like wasting anything. Okay. I'm going to mix that in. All right. Next, we're going to add our oatmeal. What I have here is 1.5 cups. Now, before I get letters writing into me, I'm very aware. It's right in front of me. Okay. In your dry bowl where you've mixed up your flour, your baking soda, and your salt, you're going to add about 2 tablespoons. And I'm doing this off camera, but okay, actually I'll show you what I'm doing here. We're going to add about 2 tablespoons of cinnamon and about 1 tablespoon of nutmeg. So we're going to take your spoon or your mixing spoon and mix that together before we actually add that with our ingredients. Now the first thing I like to do is I don't like mixing in the oatmeal and the flour at once. I like to add in my oatmeal into the wet ingredients, mix that in thoroughly, and see what happens when you mix oatmeal. We're going to do that right now. I've added my 1.5 cups of oatmeal and raisin to my wet ingredients. What oatmeal actually does is, I don't know if explode is the right word, but it puffs up. in that wetness. If you ever, and I used to love oatmeal growing up for breakfast. You know, I ate it as a child, as a toddler, and then with milk, a little raisin, a little brown sugar, just yum yum. For instance, when you add hot water to your oatmeal, you notice how it quickly absorbs that that wetness, whether it's milk, water, or whatever, and that's what the oatmeal is actually doing here. So I like to add that in, and see how quickly it absorbs all of that wetness. And then now I'm going to add my flour. Add that in. There we go. We're going to mix that in. We're going to mix it in very thoroughly. Make sure that your oven is set at 350 degrees. You know what? It truly is a personal preference on whether you use a mixing spoon or a hand blender, and as I discussed in my last show, it's my personal preference to mix it in with a mixing spoon. I just feel that I have more control over the dough, and things are being mixed in thoroughly. So we're going to mix that in. One of the important things of baking cookies, depending on what type of cookie you're baking, you want to pay close attention to the texture of your cookie dough or cookie batter. And I've been doing this so many years. I can tell by eye how tart on, how spot on my dough is. And see, that's perfect. And see, I'm going to set this aside, and I'm going to get out my cookie sheet. Now, personally, for the sake of people who are learning, who are baking for the first time, because I want things to turn out very perfect for you. Okay? Take your cookie sheet, and you can line it with cookie, I forget what you call them. See, I don't even use it. But you know what? I'm not going to use it. I was going to do it for the cameras. I changed my mind. I really feel that using a liner for the cookie sheet alters the taste of the cookie. I really do. And so what we're going to do, I'm going to show you. Let's move this over here. Okay. I'm going to show you how to, first of all, I want you to see the texture of this cookie dough. Okay, it's not too wet. See that? It's not too wet. It's not too dry.